So now I'm going to start training on the Air Force Form 911. So this form is for Master Sergeants and Senior Master Sergeants. It's pretty similar to the 910 that I trained on last month, but with a few changes. I will go through the whole form as well, but most of it will be repeated from the 910 training that we did last month. In Section 1, the member's name, last, first, and middle initial. Block 2, their full social. So this social should be the member's full social security number, not just their last 4. The rank as of the closeout date. So the member's rank should match the closeout date on the report. So Master Sergeants should always end 30 September of odd years for non-EAD or 30 September every year for AGR members. 2D AFSC, this should be the member's duty AFSC that they hold, and it should match whatever's on the UMD and the personnel. In Block 5, the organization, command, and location. The organization would be the member's actual unit. The command is going to be the command that unit falls under. The location will be the location of the unit that the member is a part of. So the location, so that should be the location that the member's unit. And then the non-EAD or AGR, as I mentioned during the 910 training, this is optional. However, it does help us when we're processing the reports. That just helps us when we're processing, make sure that the closeout date and the reason for report are correct. So if your unit doesn't want to specify if the member is non-EAD or AGR, it is an optional block, but it does help us answer questions before sending it back for the question. The passcode, this should be the member's passcode, and then the senior rater ID. So this is going to be the ID that the senior rater for that unit holds. So if the member's a part of a squadron, the senior rater ID will most likely be the wing commander's ID number. So each senior rater has their own ID, and that should be added to the Air Force Form 911. The period of report, this should always start the day after the last report closed out, and most likely will end on the member's SCOD, so static closeout date. If a directed by half report is required, this will close out the day before the member promote. In future trainings, we will go over directed by half reports as well. In Block 9, the number of days non-rated, this should be the amount of days that were approved non-rated days during the reporting period. The number of days supervision should be the number of days that the rater who is writing the report supervised the member. So if the member's supervisor started supervising them 120 days before the closeout date, it should say 120 days in the number of days supervision. It does not have to be the full reporting period. And the number of days non-rated and the number of days supervision do not have to equal the full reporting period. This amount just can't be longer than the reporting period. And then in Block 11, the reason for report. So we have the different reasons for report. An annual would be an AGR member ending on their static closeout date. A directed by commander report is completed when the commander obviously directs the report, and it will only add derogatory comments on the report. The commander can decide the closeout date for the report, but the report will only include derogatory information. There will be no positive bullets on the report itself. A biennial report is going to be a non-EAD member ending on their static closeout date, or SCOD. A directed by half report is when a member is required to end the report the day before they promote or demote, because their reporting period would be longer than 24 months due to that promotion or demotion. A CRO report is no longer a report that is allowed for enlisted members. That is reserved for officer members. Initial is not going to be used on the Air Force Form 911. This is only for the senior airman and below reports. And then directed by NGB. If NGB directs a report is required, then this would be the reason for report. I personally have not seen very many reports that NGB directs, so this reason for report should be used very, very seldomly. Section 2 is the job description for the member. In Block 1, this should be the duty title. They should spell out the job description, and then no uncommon acronyms or abbreviations. So uncommon would be anything that the average Air Force member would not know what that acronym or abbreviation is. NCOIC or senior NCOIC is acceptable. CEL is another one, the senior enlisted leader, that is acceptable. So just make sure, just kind of think of, would the average Air Force member know what this acronym or abbreviation means? If you do not think the average member would know, just please spell it out. Block 2 is going to be the actual job description of the member. So this should be their primary duties and additional duties, any tasks and responsibilities that they have. And then this line right here, bullets are limited to a maximum of 2 lines per bullet, is authorized everywhere on the report, not just in the job description section. And white space is authorized at the end of the bullet. So section 3, this is going to be their performance in leadership, their performance in their primary duties, any followership or training performance. So their rating, they have to at least receive one of these 4 ratings right here, the met some but not all, the met all, exceeded some but not all, or exceeded most if not all. The not rated is only going to be used if the report is fully non-rated, if the whole entire report had non-rated time on it. If met some but not all expectations is chosen, the report does not automatically become a referral. It becomes a referral once a derogatory comment is added to the report. Again, minimum of 1 bullet. This applies to each section on the report. So each section has to have a minimum of 1 bullet on it. If comments are not provided, this section not used would be the bullet. So this section not used does count as a bullet being used for that section. And then the rest of these also apply to the entire form, the rest of the comments that are in the actual template. So no PME statements, personal PME statements. They cannot mention or recommend most likely senior NCOA on an Air Force Form 911 unless they won an award. So if they won the John Levittow, Academic Achievement, Commandant, etc., then the PME is acceptable, and you would have to mention that the member won the award. I have seen on a lot of Air Force Form 911s, because senior enlisted members are, recommending members for ALS, or, getting people into ALS or NCOA, that is acceptable because it's not personal PME. So if they're recommending others, or we're supervising others that completed ALS or NCOA, then that is acceptable to put on the report. And then this is what it would look like if the bullet goes on to the second line. So it can be a double dash as shown here, or it can just be a run-on sentence without a dash in front of it. So the 2 lines are acceptable, and either way is acceptable, either the double dash or just a run-on bullet. Again, no personal fitness statements. They cannot mention a score or category anywhere on the report. So, scored 95% or scored an excellent. I have been seeing a lot of units using AFFA, the acronym Air Force Fitness Assessment. We have been catching those, so please try to not use any personal fitness statements on the report. Cannot be stratified in any section other than one that I will mention later on the report. So in the actual performance sections, so on the front page and then on 2 of the sections on the second page, they cannot be stratified. But I will mention one, this is acceptable on the Air Force Form 911. And then also, so there's no promotion recommendations allowed in the performance sections. Again, there is going to be a section that does allow a promotion recommendation that I will also mention once we go through a little bit further down the form. So stratification and promotion recommendations, I will specifically say which section and when they are allowed on the form. Civilian employment. So the member cannot have civilian employment on their EPR unless it directly relates to a military position. So if the member's a technician and they do the same job on drill weekends that they do when they're a technician, then that can be mentioned. If the member, for example, during the week is a GS employee in the CSS and they do personnel related tasks, but then during drill they are in security forces and they do security forces related tasks, then those two cannot be mentioned on the same report. That's when the civilian performance reports would mention their civilian job. And then no medical comments. So they cannot have personal medical comments relating to the member on the report. If the member is non-rated due to medical, there should not be anything about that on the report. When you're sending it to us in VPC, please just mention in the coordination comments, member not rated due to medical. That's all we have to know. We don't have to know anything specific. Please do not have any personal medical comments on there. Section 4, this is the whole airman concept. Again, they have to have a rating on the report. They cannot receive not rated unless it is a fully non-rated report. The member can have senior enlisted joint PME 1 or 2 mentioned if they completed it. They cannot mention if they enrolled or they're halfway through. They can mention if they completed it only. And then any career field related schools, training, CDCs, college, degree requirements, those are acceptable on the report. Any leadership development schools and or seminars are also acceptable. As long as it's not senior NCOA, most likely not going to be NCOA for a 9/11, but as long as it's not senior NCOA, they can mention development schools and or seminars. Section 5. This is the member's overall rating. So this is the rating that we will be inputting into MilPDS once the report gets to our level. Again, if the member receives a met some but not all expectations, the report is not automatically a referral. It becomes a referral once a derogatory comment is added to the report. Section 6. This is where the rater is going to sign the report. So they are going to fill in their signature block information, their duty title, and their last 4 of their social. If the rater is a civilian, they do not have to put the last 4 of their social. They can if they choose to, or they can just put 0000, or just leave it blank. But if it is a military member, then they must add the last 4 of the rater's social. The rater has to at least be the same rank or higher than the ratee. The member's rater cannot be a lower rank than the ratee. And they must sign and date the report. Section 7 is the additional raters comments. So they are allowed to add comments in their section if they want. If they do not want to provide comments, then they should be adding this section not used into the report. There is a minimum of 1 bullet per section. So this section not used would be included as that 1 bullet if that is what the additional rater chooses to add. If it's a referral EPR, then they have to have one of the 2 mandatory comments that are in the AFI for referral reports. The additional rater would either concur or non-concur with the rater. If they non-concur, they do have to add why they do not concur with the rater's overall rating. The additional rater will then add their information in the signature block. The additional rater must be at least a senior NCO or higher and must be at least the same rank or higher than the rater. If, for example, this report is completed for a master sergeant, the rater could be a master sergeant and the additional rater could also be a master sergeant. But if the report is for a senior master sergeant, the rater would not be able to be a master sergeant and the addition rater must at least be the same rank or higher than the rater. They will then add their duty title, last four, and then they will sign and date. And then section 8, this is the unit commander, military or civilian director, or other authorized reviewer section. Again, they will concur or non-concur. If they do not concur, then they have to add a reason why they do not concur with the rating. This applies to, this bullet right here applies to the final evaluators section. So, I mean the unit commander section, sorry. The CCAF conferred would be marked yes if the member has a 2-year accredited degree completed. It is not only the CCAF anymore, it is any 2-year accredited degree that they can put yes for the CCAF conferred. So it does not specifically have to be the CCAF. It can be any 2-year accredited degree. The PME complete, this would be marked yes if the member is enrolled prior to the closeout date of the report. The member does not specifically have to complete PME as long as they are enrolled into PME prior to the closeout date. This can be marked yes. If the member has not enrolled nor completed PME prior to the closeout date, then that's when this would be no for PME complete. If the member is promotion eligible, this will be marked yes, and promotion eligible is specifically time and grade, time and service eligible. So none of the other factors apply to block 3. This is specifically going to be time and grade, time and service. The referral report in block 4, this will be marked yes or no, depending on if the report is a referral or not. And the quality force review, this section or block has to be marked yes, because that shows that the member's records were reviewed prior to the EPR being complete. If this is marked no, we will be sending it back because the member's personnel record was not reviewed for quality force indicators during the reporting period. I didn't mention future roles, so we don't have too much guidance in the AFI in regards to future roles. As long as the member is recommended a role or assignment that best serves the Air Force and continues the airman's development, then that future role is acceptable. You do not have to include a future role, so these 3 blocks can be left blank. You can choose to, only add 1 and leave the other 2 blank. As long as it is a role or assignment that best serves the Air Force and continues the airman's development, it can be added into future roles. In the signature block section, the name, rank, branch of service, the normal signature block, and then the duty title. So this should be a unit commander, a military or civilian director, or an other authorized reviewer. So if this duty title, for example, is pilot instead of commander, then we're going to be questioning why that member is signing in the unit commander section. If the member is an other authorized reviewer and the commander has granted that member access to sign in his stead, then a MFR should be attached in the additional attachments section of VPC when sending the report to us. The commander's last 4, and then they will sign and date as well. So section 9, this section is different from the Air Force Form 910, and it has its own kind of unique rules to it. So like I said earlier, stratifications and promotion recommendations are not allowed on the form other than in section 9. So if the senior rater, usually a wing commander, is stratifying the member, then they can add a stratification bullet in section 9. A deputy evaluator or intermediate evaluator is not allowed to stratify a member. Only the senior rater can add a stratification. If the member is promotion eligible, so if section 9 or 8, block 3, promotion eligible is marked yes, any of the final evaluators can provide a promotion recommendation. Both of these rules only apply to section 9. So if the final evaluator is providing a promotion recommendation, they have to provide that bullet in section 9 only. They cannot provide the bullet in Section 8 or any of the other sections on the report. So now let's go over the final evaluator positions. This is one of the common mistakes that we see when we're reviewing the report. One of the common mistakes is Section 9 is just completely left blank, and Section 9 is a mandatory section for completion on the Air Force Form 911. The other common error that we see is the final evaluator position is incorrect. So I'll go over what each position means and who each position would be applied to. The first would be the intermediate evaluator. So if the intermediate evaluator is usually the squadron commander. There's a little bit different rules when it comes to guard and reserve. Reserve, the member must be at least a major or above to sign in the final evaluator section. For the guard members, the intermediate evaluator must be the full-time unit commander. So I've seen quite often where there's captains as unit commanders, they are allowed to sign in the guard as an intermediate evaluator. For the reserves, the final evaluator must be at least a major and a squadron unit commander. The deputy evaluator is any colonel, squadron commander, or any group commander. So if the member's squadron commander is a colonel, then they will sign as a deputy evaluator. Any group commander would also sign as a deputy evaluator, even if they're a lieutenant colonel. The actual definition of what a deputy evaluator is a person who works directly for the senior rater. For example, if it's a vice wing commander and they work directly for the member who holds the senior rater ID, then they would be signing as a deputy evaluator as well. So again, any colonel, squadron commander, any group commander, or anyone who works directly for the senior rater would sign as a deputy evaluator. And then the senior rater. So this is the actual member who holds the senior rater ID. Most likely, 98% of the time, it will be the wing commander. There are some units out there whose group or even sometimes squadron commander holds the senior rater ID, and at that point they can also sign as a senior rater because they hold the senior rater ID. The only time a senior rater can sign the report is one, if they're stratifying the member. So if the member is either the top 10 or for master sergeants or top 20% of senior master sergeants, then the senior rater would mark that the member is either in the top 10% or top 20%, and they can choose to add a written stratification if they choose. The only other time a senior rater can sign the report is if they are forced to endorse the report. A forced endorsement is when the senior rater is the first commander in the member's chain. So in this case, if the member works directly for the senior rater and the senior rater is signing as, the rater, additional rater, commander, and final evaluator, then they would be marked as a forced endorsement. That is the only other time the senior rater would sign the report. If this member is not receiving a stratification and does not directly work for the senior rater, then the senior rater is not allowed to sign the report. The report must go back down to at least the deputy evaluator or intermediate evaluator. We'll just throw this example out. The member is trying to receive a stratification from the senior rater. So the intermediate evaluator would, coordinate with the deputy evaluator and say, this member is ready for a stratification. I think they're the number 1 out of my 10 master sergeants. I think they should receive a stratification from the senior rater. The senior rater then looks at the member and decides that member is either within that 10% or not within that 10%. If they are, then the senior rater would sign, and they would add a stratification that the member is in the top 10% of master sergeants. If the senior rater does not stratify that member in the top 10%, then the report would go back down to either the deputy evaluator if they choose to sign it, or the intermediate evaluator if the deputy evaluator thinks that the intermediate should be signing the report as the final evaluator. That brings me to my next point. The final evaluator can be someone else who has signed the report. So Section 8, the unit commander, and Section 9, the final evaluator, are independent sections. So they do not rely on the previous rater and additional rater sections. These are separate from each other and separate from the rest of the form. So for example, we'll say the rater is the command chief. So the member's command chief will sign as the rater, and then the group commander, for example, is the additional rater. So the member's additional rater would then be the group commander. The group commander can then also sign as the unit commander because they meet the qualifications to sign as the unit commander. And then they would also sign as the final evaluator as the deputy evaluator because they meet the qualifications to sign as the final evaluator. Another example, if the member's rater is the squadron commander, they work directly for the squadron commander, then the member's squadron commander would sign as their rater. The squadron commander's rater will then sign as the additional rater. It's most likely going to be the group commander. The unit commander then can go back down to the squadron commander because the squadron commander meets the qualifications to sign as the unit commander. The final evaluator can again be the squadron commander as the intermediate, or it can go back up to the group commander as the deputy. So just keep in mind, the unit commander and the final evaluator section are independent from each other, and they are also independent from the rater and additional raters sections. The rater and additional rater sections are the only two that are dependent on each other, if that makes sense. So the rater, the additional rater must at least be the same rank or higher than the rater, but the unit commander and the final evaluator sections, as long as the member who is signing in these sections meets the qualifications, they are allowed to kind of deviate from the rank requirements as long as they meet the position requirements. That is kind of how the signature portions work and the final evaluator section. The functional examiner or Air Force advisor section in section 10, this will only be if necessary. The functional examiner would be if the final evaluator does not have any knowledge of that member's AFSC, and the Air Force advisor would be if the final evaluator is not an Air Force member. They would need an Air Force advisor to review the report and make sure it falls within the guidelines of the Air Force. If the Air Force advisor or functional examiner is used, then they must be at least a major or above. The remarks section, this section is used to spell out uncommon acronyms. And then section 12, the Ratee's acknowledgement. So the Ratee must be the last person to sign the report, and all of the signature dates must be in chronological order. If the Ratee is not available or Ratee refuses to sign the report, then anyone who has previously signed the report must sign in the Ratee's signature block and choose one of the two drop-downs. This section cannot just be left blank and one of the two drop-downs is picked. Someone who has previously signed the report must sign for the Ratee. Okay, so that's the Air Force Form 911. The only major difference is the unit commander section and the final evaluator section. Most of the same rules that apply to the 910 apply to the 911 as well. So I'm going to go through chat and see if there's any questions in there. So I see Sergeant Mahan has their hand raised if they wanted to ask their question.
Yeah, this is Sergeant Mahan. I'm with the 182nd Victoria. So up in, well, I guess it doesn't really matter what section, but where you have in the bullet area where it says the form never changed, but the reg changed, this section not used. the reg still says to say this line intentionally left blank. Is it either or does it need to be what the reg says?
Does that say only specifically for the 911s? Because when the new AFI came out, it should have been changed to this section not used.
Well, I don't know. I just pulled up the reg and under the 910, I wasn't able to be on the training for the 910 one, but on the 910, that's presuming my FSS have the most current version, but I guess I would have to look. But
if the version's from 2016, then that's the old version. If it is from 2019, then that'll be the new version.
Okay. Then possibly disregard because I've got the old version, but we've been using this line intentionally left blank for almost a year. But the form never changed. If
that's the only error, we should not be sending it back. If we are sending it back for other errors, we should be including that in the comments that we send back.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so the next hand that I see is Chief Stallings.
Hey, sir. Yes, we here in North Carolina have one of our folks here, Tech Sergeant Rodriguez, who has a question.
Okay.
Hey, sir. So if a member went from DSG to AGR or from AGR to DSG in the middle of a rating period, what would the reason for those reports be?
If a member changes status in the middle of the reporting period, they will end on the new status's next closeout date, and the reason for report will be the status as of the closeout date. So if the member moved to a DSG as of the closeout date, then the reason would be biennial. If the member changed status to AGR, then the reason for report would be annual.
And to piggyback on that, sir, this is Chief Stallings. We covered that last time, and it can also be more than a year if it's switching from non-EAD to AGR, correct?
Yes, depending on when the member switches from AGR. If they become an AGR after the annual closeout date would have been, then the report can be a 2-year report as an AGR with the reason for report as annual. In those cases, when the report is getting sent up to our level, please in the coordination kind of explain, the dates for when the member switched statuses. Otherwise, we might be sending it back just to clarify to make sure that the report is done correctly.
Perfect. I got one coming to you. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. So now we have Airman Deal.
Hello, sir. This is Senior Airman Deal at the 118th Wing. One of my sergeants had a question.
So this is Technical Sergeant Ambrose. Just a quick question about the form. You mentioned that if you select met some but not all, it is not a referral unless there's derogatory comments. My question is, when you select that box, it closes out all the signatures and it has to be wet signed. What is the procedure for routing those forward if they're not a referral?
So the new form that was just released should not be automatically choosing referral. If it is, then I recommend Adobe editing the form so that the rating would be met some but not all, and then continuing on with the signatures. So the new form that allows you to choose manual or digital signatures should not be whiting out or not allowing you to sign in that section.
Copy that. I appreciate that information.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So now we have the 122nd Fighter Wing CSS.
Unmute. Hi, this is Sergeant Gilbert from the 122nd Fighter Wing. Our question was, is the 911 similar to the 910? If someone else other than the Ratee signs, do we still have to wait the 30-day period?
Yes. So that just gives the member the time, maybe they're a drill status member that will give them the 30 days to sign the report. And if they are still not available to sign the report, then that is when you would go ahead and sign it for the member. If the ratee refuses, however, then you do not have to wait the 30-day because the member is refusing at that time to sign the report.
Thank you.
And now we have Captain Christopher.
Hey, good afternoon. It's Captain Christopher from the Virgin Islands. My question is in regards to the over in the signature block areas. So it's a two-part question. The first part is for the ratee, for the rater and the additional rater. Can that be the same person who signs that? And then my follow-on question is in regards to the senior rater. So I know that for the drop-down options, as you went over, you have the other evaluators. So here at the headquarters level, for example, after myself, the next person will be our first 06 in the chain. For that member, would I just, since they have the senior rater ID, would I just pick them and then click forced endorsement? Over.
To answer your first question, so the only time a member can be a single evaluator on the form is if they are an 06 or higher and they meet the requirements as the unit commander and final evaluator section. If the member does not meet the requirements, so they are not an 06 or they are not a unit commander or final evaluator, they cannot sign the entire report. To answer your second question, so if you're the rater and then the additional rater is the member who holds the senior rater ID, that is the perfect example of when the forced endorsement block would be checked, because the senior rater is forced to endorse the report as the first final evaluator in that member's chain of command.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Now we have Sergeant Natal.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I have a question for you. You said that on the remarks section where they spell out all their uncommon acronyms. So you said it has to go chronological. How come they send it back if it's not alphabetical, or am I confusing this with something else?
Oh, I meant the signature dates have to be chronological. The remarks should be alphabetical.
Okay. I just wanted I wanted to clear that because I thought I heard you say chronological and I thought, oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. So the dates that the members sign should be in chronological order.
Right, but the remarks section, all the acronyms have to be alphabetical, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a good day.
You too. And now we have Airman Hicks.
Yes, sir. This is Airman Hicks, Senior Airman Hicks here from ARPC. So I had a question about the intermediate person signing. I have had a eval get pushed back because currently we do have a captain as our unit commander who is signing non-promotion eligibles. Now he is on G series orders, and I heard you say that if they're authorized by the commander to sign, that they need an MFR. However, I've not seen that form yet, or I've not seen that request needed in the past. So is there somewhere we can actually pull that form so I can start routing it with our EPRs, or is it just something that we need to create?
It's just an internal MFR. It would just be, the commander or authorizing that person to sign in their stead for a specific, rank or dates. But if the captain is the squadron commander for guard members, then they are allowed to sign. The intermediate evaluator for reserve members must be an 04 or higher, according to the AFI.
Tracking. One other thing, and I heard someone say the form wasn't updated on the ARPC website, so I will work on that with the team as well. So we'll get that form updated for everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, and now we have, I'm sorry if I butcher your name, Airman Sakapova. Airman Sakapova?
Hi,
Do you have
sir. Sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting myself.
That's okay.
So we have a question that involves routing evaluations to ARPC. So we recently noticed that evaluations that have nothing wrong with them sit at ARPC for a month or more before they get approved. Now we're trying to catch up with our evaluations, and some members are overdue 3 evaluations. So the question is there an advantage of sending evaluations, one at a time for them to be approved more quickly or to go through faster versus sending 3 at a time to catch the member up with all of the overdue evaluations?
So our queue has been increasing and increasing more now that there's more drill being held due to COVID, and the tech sergeant and staff sergeant squads both were recently. So right now we're at about 30 to 35 days of processing once it comes to our level. So that might be why the time frame's a little bit longer than it was earlier this year. And if you do decide to send all 3 of the EVRs, you can send them in, again, chronological order, but you can send them, within a day of each other. So if you send the 2015 report, and then the next day just send up the 2017, and then the next day send up the 2019, we should be processing those in the correct order. Because that's the order that they come to us. So if you are sitting behind, but you have completed all those EPRs, we recommend that you just send them all to us, within a day of each other.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then the next hand is Michelle Mercier. So now we have Captain Rodriguez Bonet.
Yes, hi. My question is, how do you determine the rating chain for an AGR whose military supervisor is a traditional guardsman?
So traditional guardsmen can rate AGRs. So the rating chain would just be, the member's normal rating chain, whoever the member's rater is, whoever that rater's rater is. It shouldn't change too much if the member's rater is just a different status than them.
So it's based on the military organizational chart, not on the civilian?
Right. It would be the military chart, because it is the actual military performance report, not the civilian one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and then we have Senior Master Sergeant Miller.
Yes, sir. So I'm up in Niagara Falls for the 30th Air Report Squadron. You just made a comment. We're working quite the backlog up here. And we have people who are about 3 evaluations deep that we do have. You kind of referenced sending them all up at the same time. Are we concerned with projecting them in MilPDS and creating an initial coordination of VPC for each one? Or can we send them all in one VPC coordination to you?
So they should be all sent in separate EVRs. So each report should have its own VPC coordination routed through. But the MilPDS projection, you don't have to have a projection open for us to close out the report. We will we'll close it out even if the projection is either wrong or even just missing. So we should be going through and doing it in chronological order, though.
No, that sounds great. So essentially, even though the shell information will be completely wrong, because we have some master sergeants that are submitting tech sergeant EPRs that were overdue and such, we can just route each individual evaluation, separate EVRs, and really not concern ourselves with the fact that some of the shells are, reflecting today's information, not previous. And we can just start getting these to you.
Yes, sir. So the shells are a unit. It helps the unit out. At our level, we are not concerned with the shell information. We go off based off of our knowledge of what the EPR process should be. So the shell is mostly for unit.
That is phenomenal to hear. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. And then we have Sergeant McClung. Okay, now we have the 122nd CSS again has another question.
I was having a hard time unmuting myself.
Okay.
My question is, we have a lot of transfers of service members, usually senior airmen and above, and they haven't gone to tech school yet. And raters ask what to put in for their bullets, because all they're really doing is coming to drill. What would you say is like feasible to put for those bullets for those members?
So if the member is joining the Air Force and they're ending on the first SCOT after they join, any performance that the member has been able to accomplish can be added to the EPR. If it's really hard to find any information, you can use this section not used, but we just recommend to try to capture all of anything or all of the information that the member was able to accomplish.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, this is Sergeant Klein from the 122nd Fighter Wing, CSS.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have noticed with some rejections that have got processed through, say for an example, like in section 1, there might be something wrong. So therefore they send it back from ARPC, but there might be something wrong throughout the rest of the form. Is there any way that we can get like the total form reviewed and then sent back with all corrections that need to be done instead of just like, the top portion? Because I know that we only get 3 times to do these corrections, and that may, take quite a lot of time. So we're trying to get that done as quickly as possible. I didn't know if that was a possibility.
So we should be reviewing the entire form, even if there's an error in the section 1, for example. We should be marking every error that we see on the form. We shouldn't just be stopping at the first one. I'm sorry that's been happening to you. I'll make sure to talk with our technicians to just, harp down that we need to be checking the entire form. So I'll make sure to mention that to the rest of our technicians as well. So now we have Sergeant
Sorry, can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Sergeant Cardenas, 944th Fighter Wing. My question is, I would like you to confirm what you said about the shells being for the unit only, and they don't have to match, because I'm spending a lot of time updating duty titles and raters and dates. And in my unit, some raters change monthly, and I'm having a hard time. That's kind of keeping some of us behind due to that. And I'm only there 1 weekend a month. So, and then meal PDS updates take days, sometimes weeks. And if I'm not on orders to keep up with everything. So it's okay to send in a shell that doesn't match the EPR or OPR. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Yes. So at our level, we do not review the shell that is attached to match it up with the EPR. That is strictly for unit. It keeps, it kind of helps the unit, but in your case, it seems like it might be hindering your unit. So I would talk with whoever, is in charge of the overall EPR, OPRs for your unit or wing, just to discuss maybe not having to update all of those shells, as long as you have an internal way to track who the raider is and things like that.
Okay.
Hey, sir, this is.
Thank you, sir.
Can you hear me? This is Master Sergeant Carpenter. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I'm going to speak and help you out. So what units can do is when you're initiating your shells, you hit display VPC shell. You do Alt A to copy it and then attach it in the attached shell, and you manipulate all the data for that EVR. And that's how you get a correct shell. And you tell your raidees, or excuse me, the raider, to use the attached shell and not the display VPC shell. That way you can go on and do 2, 3, 4 years worth of EPRs and not wait on the system to initiate the next EVR cord for you.
Thank you for that, sir. So I see you had your hand raised as well. Did you have
That's
a?
what I
Okay.
was gonna speak to help you guys out, to let units know, because I deal with that here at the 189th, and I used to work there at ARPC also, and that's one way you help units get caught up, because honestly, like you said, until mill PDS is closed out, the next VPC cord's not going to kicked out, and you're going to be waiting a while. So that's the way to work around the system, is just do the display and attach the shell, and you'll be good to go. You just got to change all the data, though, unfortunately manually, but that helps you out.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And then we have Miss Deborah Shields.
Okay, my question is, if you have an individual who is promoted and pins on before the SCOD, but has not been participating for whatever reason, we have an individual who's doing this. Is it okay to not do that current EPR and just do one on the next biennial SCOD? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. If the member is not participating, so that is when you'd be using non-rated days. If they're not participating due to falling within the non-rated AFI, well, in the evaluations AFI, but the non-rated section of the AFI, then you would use non-rated days for that. But that report still, the directed by half still would be required if it is necessary.
Okay, so if it's a promotion, it's a directed by half, not a biennial?
Not always. So it depends on when the member's promotion date was and what their new ranks next SCOD would be. So a directed by half report is required if the member's new ranks next SCOD would cause the report to be more than 24 months for non-EAD or 12 months for AGR. That's when a directed by half is required. If the member's new ranks next SCOD, makes the report only a year long, then the directed by half is not required.
Okay, so if it's a 9-month EPR, we don't need to put the directed by half. We just do the biennial.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Now we have the name on here is Santa Farah.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm helping out Michelle Mercier. Her microphone's not working.
Okay.
She's just asking what version, the 911, that we should be using.
Whatever the most recent version is on EPUBs, that should be the one that allows you to do the digital or manual signatures. Unfortunately, for some reason on my computer, it doesn't let me pull it up, so I just use the old version for this training.
Okay. Should it be the version 2? Because on there, it's showing the version 1.
I heard 2.
I'm not exactly sure what they renamed it as. I think they might have kept it as version 1.
do not know your account number, same representative.
Okay.
I'm not
Thank you.
sure what the exact version is.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Chief Stallings.
Hey, sir. Here, the 145th in North Carolina again, and Tech Sergeant Rodriguez has a follow-up.
Okay.
So this question is concerning accounting dates. If a member transfers to our unit within 120 days, can we reach out to the previous units to accomplish that evaluation, or can we accomplish that evaluation in lieu of the LOE, the optional LOE that they may receive from the previous unit?
So if the member PCSs or PCAs after the accounting date, then the previous report should be completed by the previous unit. If all attempts to contact that previous unit fail, or they just refuse to write that report, then at that point, you should be able to write the report. According to the AFI, it should be the previous unit though. So I would just try to contact them as much as possible and kind of get them to complete that full report.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And then we have Sergeant Peterson.
Hi, sir. It's Senior Peterson from the 142nd in Oregon. And I just had a quick question to go back a few topics, but you had mentioned that the shell is strictly for unit level or wing use, that you guys don't really even check it. So if the unit has a good mechanism for tracking to make sure that the shell is accurate, do we have to attach it in VPC, or can we just skip it altogether?
You can skip that. That's just specifically, like I said, unit level kind of knowledge and assistance. So like I said, we don't check them. So if your unit decides to not add them, we are not going to send it back for that.
Thank you. Is it possible to get that in writing?
I can try to add that to our next FAQs that we send out, or maybe did you know type thing. I'll make a note of that and try to get that sent out to you, or to everyone.
Awesome.
Actually.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So this is Colonel Toy, Roxanne Toy, I'm AMG advisor here. Can you email me that as well, and we can add it to our A1 up for the guard? Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. I will be sure to send that over to you.
Thank you, sir.
And then we have Master Sergeant Boucher.
Yeah, it's Boucher. You can call
Boucher,
me Justin.
sorry.
Yeah, no worries, man. Hey, I'm just chiming in. I didn't have any questions, but I just wanted to compliment you and say I think you're doing a fantastic job. Anybody else could probably agree with me. You've been clear, you've been concise with the topic that isn't necessarily the most exciting. You've been impatient with everybody, so just wanted to call that out. I think you're doing a great job, man. Keep it up.
I appreciate that, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then we have Tech Sergeant Thomas.
Hi, sir. This is Tech Sergeant Thomas from NGB HR.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I know it's been mentioned a couple times about members changing statuses from either AGR to DSG or vice versa, and how the reg notates if the member is changing the status from a DSG to an AGR. My question is specifically for stat tour members. We've been running into the issue with members changing statuses from guard technically to active on the stat tour, and them changing it between the accounting dates. So my question is, I know the reg says that you can't, as long as the rating period doesn't go over that 2 years, that you can keep the same closeout date. But right now I'm kind of in a debate with my leadership about that piece of the reg that says that when they're changing statuses, to either change it the day before they come on orders, or leave it as the current SCOT date, as long as it doesn't go over that 2 year mark. So can you just give me a little bit of a clarity, if you could, on that.
So the way that us at ARPC interprets that portion of the AFI is that if they change status and their new report would not exceed that time frame, then that DBH is not required. But I would have to actually probably get with the actual policy makers on that question, just to clarify with them, what did they exactly mean with that paragraph. That's just the way
Yes,
that
that would
we
help out
interpret
so
it.
much.
Yes.
That's how
So,
I interpret it, but I've had my leadership come back and say, no, you need to change it to reflect their new closeout date, the day before they come on statutory orders. So it's been kind of a back and forth. So I wanted to make sure that's clear. So if you do, can you please just add, ask them to add that piece into the reg if possible.
yes, ma'am. I'll try to. We have a running list of things that we wanted to talk to policyholders about, just the way that we interpret it versus what they meant by it, and I'll make sure once we get an answer, I can send that your way.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, and then the last one that I see on here is Chief Jimenez.
Hi, thank you. And I agree, absolutely. You're doing a phenomenal job. Thank you so much. Appreciate the training. I'd like to refer back a little bit to the box on the final evaluators comments. The forced development box. If I understand it correctly, that is then more geared to who's signing as the rater and then, or as the additional rater and final evaluator versus the member themselves, correct?
For the forced endorsement block?
Yes, I'm sorry, forced endorsement, yes.
So the forced endorsement is going to be used if the senior rater is forced to endorse the report because they are the first final evaluator in that member's chain of command. So that's the only time that a forced endorsement would be used. If there are any other final evaluators in that member's chain of command, then it should be getting sent back down to either the deputy or intermediate, and they would not be signing as a forced endorsement.
Okay, so for example, and again, just for clarity, we're at wing staff and there's members that their rater is their command chief, the command chief, and then of course his rater is the wing commander. So then therefore the wing commander would be both the additional rater and senior rater.
Right, and the unit commander as well. Yes, ma'am.
Right, and unit commander. Okay, so that's the only time they would forced endorsement would be checked off.
Right. If the senior rater is the first final evaluator in the member's chain of command and they are forced to endorse the report. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And again, kudos. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, now we have Sergeant Blaker.
Yeah, I'm just gonna echo what the chief and Master Sergeant Bousset said. Man, you're gifted. Thanks for this great presentation. What a pleasure.
Appreciate that, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, and then I think this is going to have to be the last question. We ran a little bit over time for Airman Burgos.
Hi, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We were just wondering if you can please send us a copy of the template that you used in today's training.
Yes. So I think we are also trying to add this to ARPC's website as well. But if you open a MyPERS incident asking if we can attach the template, then we should be able to attach it straight to that incident, if that's okay. I'm sorry. I feel like it would just be a lot of work if I could try to find all of the attendees and send this template out to them when I know in the future it might be added to the website.
No, that's fine.
Sir, it was attached on the announcements that went out. So we can work on that, but just so you're aware, everyone should have had this attachment with them. But Airman
With the most
Burgos, we'll
recent,
get your name down.
the most recent attachment, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Colonel Toy. I also sent it out on both of my reminders for the guard side.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. So that will conclude the training for today. Thank you for attending. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, man. Nice job.
Great job, sir.